So thank you very much for joining me on another edition of Janome HQ. And we're doing our series here of A to Z with Janome. So if you've been with me since last Monday is when we started all of this. So it's really fun of going through the alphabet Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 p.m. And if you happen to tune in late or you miss these live presentations at the time, they're now being stored on Instagram at the IGTV. You can either download the app, depending on what version of phone or device that you have, or on Instagram on the accounts page, you'll see a little TV with antenna. So a little icon. So then that's where the Instagram lives are being stored. And as well, a couple of days later, I load them on to the Janome HQ YouTube channel. So you can view in then. So it was last Monday, we started off with A. We're all the way up to F. So today, Janome HQ Instagram Live is brought to you by the letter F. And I have to make a shout out to our fabulous Parts and Notions coordinator, Tanya, of I Am Ginger Quilts. Tanya draws these wonderful drawings. This is our FB border guide foot, which I'll talk to you all about, is a special optional presser foot. So we've got a couple of F feet, basically. But also, too, I wanted to point out, I wore these. These have become my Instagram jeans. I wear these for every Instagram live presentation. Tanya designed this. She drew this truck design, and then Celine, our educator from Montreal, digitized it. And then Alan, our marketing and advertising guru, put it up on the website. So you can go to janome.ca, our Janome Canada website, and scroll across the top to where it says offers and promotions. And you click on that, and that'll take you to our current sales flyer that is in effect until the end of May. So again, it's done like next week, basically, or a week and a half. I can't believe it's almost June. So yes, and in that flyer, then you can scroll down until you see it says like free download of your truck embroidery file for all your Janome embroidery machines. So then you can click on that link and download that embroidery file to your computer, put it on a USB, and then you can plug it into the fabulous MemoryCraft 15,000, for example, that I'm demoing on today. Or you would put that USB in your 500E or 550E to embroider it. So it's very fun. So again, Tanya is very talented. So today, I will show you my sample now because I often get so busy talking I forget to do it at the end. So today's Instagram Live is brought to you by the letter F. So specifically I'm going to talk about the FB, or the border guide foot. So it will stitch these beautiful rows of decorative stitches or any kind of stitches that are built into your machine, and then they help you line it up so it's nice even parallel rows. So it's a really fun foot. Now, I mentioned it is an optional presser foot, but actually I think it was the 7700 that came out a number of years ago. I think that was the only foot that this, or the only machine that this foot ever came with. Other than that, it's an optional accessory. So do check with your Janome dealer. Now, many of you would be familiar with our F foot that comes with a number of our machines, or again, it's available in a separate blister pack if yours possibly has gone missing or broke, or again, maybe your machine didn't come with it, but it does come with a lot of machines. So there is a little notch here at the front to indicate center needle position, and then the foot is grooved in the bottom here. So as my decorative stitches form, like they all pass through evenly, I'm not going to mash them down. So that's why this foot is good to use for decorative stitches. So that's our F foot. It's known as the satin stitch foot. So here I showed this last Friday actually for circular attachment, but this satin stitch foot, the F foot, is what was used with the circular attachment to create this very dense satin stitching. So because there's a groove at the bottom of the foot, that satin stitching goes through, no problem. And then all this other decorative stitches, again, whatever you've got built into your machine, can be used to go around and around in a circle with the circular attachment. So again, for more information about that, contact your Janome dealer, or you can review that presentation now on our Janome HQ YouTube channel. With C for circular attachment. And while you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you'll be notified every time I post a video there. So that was the F foot. It's been around forever. It's a great foot. Now, later down the road, though, a lot of people said, oh, I love that F foot, but I still can't get up as close to my project as I was like. I still can't see what's under the needle as well. So Janome, in their infinite wisdom, said, okay, great, you want more visibility. We'll just cut out that little bridge there and give you the F2 foot, which is the same foot, but it's minus that little bridge. So I've got a notch here that is the center needle position. And then again, that same wide groove at the back. Now, my machine is a 9mm machine, and actually my 15,000 here came with the F2, which is great. And our Continental M7, for example, also comes with the F2 foot. But if your machine did not come with the F2, again, you could get it from your Janome dealer. And make sure that if you have a 9mm machine or a 7mm machine or even a 5mm machine, that you get the correct size of pressure feet for your machine. And again, your Janome dealer can help you with that. So that was the F2. So that's great when we want, again, better visibility. So again, if I'm using the circular attachment, for example, and I really want to see where my stitches are going to join up, by having that more open F2 foot, I can really get up close to where the needle is so I can see my stitches join up. Or when I'm doing applique, I could really get up close to my applique and see what I'm doing. Now, on the beginning of this series, which was last Monday, I talked about the applique foot, which is great to use for all this intricate applique. So again, you could contact your Janome dealer about that, or go back to the Janome HQ YouTube channel to review. So all these videos, go back to review for more info, because it's a lot to digest at the time. But today we're going to talk about the border guide foot. And again, available in a blister pack for 9mm for my type of machine. Also available for 7 and 5mm. We'll use a slightly smaller version of this foot. Now there's instructions on the blister pack, as always, but this is the border guide foot. So it looks very similar to the F foot and the F2 foot, but this is the FB foot, so the border guide foot. And it's like the F foot with wings is what I always call these. And for more information about this foot specifically, and really all things Janome, but this foot, I know there's several blog posts on the Janome Life blog. So in your browser, you type in janomelife.wordpress.com, and up comes the Janome Life blog. And there were many posts written about this border guide foot. And it's great on how to use it to, again, stitch all your rows of decorative stitches. There's a notch here in the center for center needle position. These two notches on either side represent my 9mm wide width. And again, we've got a 7mm foot as well, so the notches would be spaced incrementally there. Now, what makes this foot very special is I've got these red, there's a red horizontal line across, which is where like the needle would be up here. So that's your needle position. And as well, I've got these vertical red lines on either side that helps me line up my rows of decorative stitches so they're nice and even. So the distance between these two rows is 9mm. And again, on the 7mm wide foot, they would be spaced 7mm apart. So it's a really fun, cute foot. And again, I've got the wide groove in the center of the foot, and then there's the grooves in the on either side of these wings where your decorative stitches can form and glide through no problem. So when I would use this foot on this sewing machine cover, which was so fun to make. Now, I rarely ever cover my machine because it's always in use, but if you would like, this sewing machine cover is a free pattern from our friends at Sew for Home. So go online and type in sew, S-E-W, for the number 4, home, and there is a slew of tutorials, videos, product reviews. They also have info on the border guide foot on how to use it and when and everything. But this sewing machine cover, they've got a lot of free patterns there. So this sewing machine cover was one of them. And it was a great place to use the border guide foot to decorate, to get used to all the decorative stitches in your machine. So I've got just a center row here of one of the heirloom stitches that I love using, and then I decided to change my thread as well, so it's a great time to experiment with different types of threads. So decorated there. If your machine has mirroring capabilities, which I will show you in just a minute, this would be a great time to do a left side and then a mirror image of the right side. So again, maybe that's not an editing function built into your machine that you use very much, so now would be a good time to use it. And now if your machine doesn't have editing like that mirror imaging, you would just turn your fabric around and sew the other direction to get that kind of mirror image. But it's a great fun project to do. Again, that's Sew for Home. And then this big sample, I used the border guide foot. There are 52 built-in hand look stitches to the new Continental M7. So I used the border guide foot to stitch all 52 samples out. So now this row here, if you can follow me down. So for example, when I'm stitching this center, this center row here, so I stitch my first row, and then I think, okay, I'm gonna go stitch this row off to the side. Then I just lined up, brought my foot back to the beginning, and then I just lined up, there's like a little groove where the toe of this foot is. So I actually lined up, then this is my previous row of stitching, so I lined up that to that edge of that stitching to that groove or this toe of the foot. So then as I stitched this row, I just went down and lined up that groove the whole way. So I didn't use the red lines in this case, but I could see where the edge again of this toe is. So I used that as a guide. So that was great. But over here, when I did these samples, then as I stitched this row of stitching, so this was my first row and I went down there, fine. Then when I came over to stitch over here to the right, then this is where I did use that red guide. I lined up that red line with my previous line of stitching here. So as I stitched down this row, whoops, I'm trying to do, as I stitched down that row, then again, I followed just that, that red line down my previous line of stitching, and that's what made that beautiful. And then when I came to do that row, then I lined up this outer red line along my original line of stitching, so like 2 rows over, and then I could do that row. So again, you decide on which marking you're going to do, and it's really good to be able to keep everything parallel. It's really very simple to do. So yes, I will snap this on, and away we go. So you can choose to mark the, your fabric if you wish. I just use like a chalk pencil, use your favorite marking tool, or even down the center, for example, you just press it and make a mark just to give you a guideline to get started. Or maybe you have a print of the fabric, as I did here. Like I wanted to go down this center of this little flower, for example. So I didn't end up marking my fabric. I just used the print of the fabric to keep me in line, to go in a straight line. If you've got stripes, even better, just follow those stripes. But here I'm just going to stitch down the center. Now I've got our iris polyester embroidery thread in, because when I'm doing decorative stitches, such as all this, I really like to use thread that I'm going to see. So that's very beautiful. Then I've got, in this sample, I used our Madeira multicolor thread. That's really, really beautiful. So again, you can use your decorative stitches with some decorative thread to really show them off. So I'm just going to get started. Ooh, now is a good time to go over. Pardon? Oh, yes, Joe was reminding me about stabilizer. Fabulous. So, yes, before I get started to stitch, there's always so much to think. Before I get started stitching, I definitely want to use stabilizer on the back of my fabric to support my stitches. So, again, you're going to get so sick of me. Even Joe said, wow, you talk about this stabilizer a lot. I do, because I love it. This is why I mention it all the time. And again, how cool, in Janome Canada, at least, we're a distributor. Janome's a distributor of Madeira products. So how convenient is that? Just call up your dealer and say, hey, I need some stabilizer. So this is a starter pack from Madeira that there's 12 different kinds of stabilizers in it, and a booklet to give you a guide on when to use each. So that's why I really recommend it. And a little, for these applications, kind of a little goes a long way. In the kit, you're given quite a big chunk to experiment with. And then after you find one you really like, this Cotton Stable, for example, is one I really like. It's got a little fusible on it, so I can buy this in a whole pack because I use it so much. Having that little bit of fusible helps keep the fabric in place, or helps keep the stabilizer in place. And then after I'm done all my decorative stitches, I can just tear off the excess. Because we're using decorative stitches, you don't necessarily want to rip all the stabilizer off in between those decorative stitches. So depending on your application, maybe it's better to use a water-soluble stabilizer, like this Avalon film it's called, and then there's an Avalon Ultra that's thicker that I really, really love. But the water-soluble stabilizer will then, once you immerse it in water, spritz it down, all that stabilizer disappears, and then your beautiful decorative stitches are left there, again, depending on your application. Now, if your stabilizer, you want to keep your stabilizer in place a little better as well. I love using this artistic tack, also available from your dealer. And I love a little goes a long way. You really don't need much to hold your fabric in place while you do your stitching. I love it because it's low VOCs. That's those volatile organic compounds. So normally when you use, the spray adhesives, you got to open every window in your house and run outside and all that. This, there's none of that. So I like that. And then if I happen to get some overspray on my table, there's also a cleaner, which is really good too. Great for your embroidery hoops. Now, don't spray this around your machine though. So as a caveat, spray it on a table away. But in this little sample, I don't have either. I just have it here. So yes, thank you for reminding me about that. So now I'm going to go to my machine and I'm going to the home button of the 15,000, and I can go up here to select what kind of stitches I want. These are my decorative and quilting stitches, the little curly cues. So I'll click on that, and then this is the categories of stitches that I have. So if I were doing applique, for example, I've got a ton of applique stitches there. I'm instead going to go down to decorative, because again, we have so many decorative stitches built into our machines, and so many people say, when will I ever use them? Well, make that sewing machine cover from, again, free pattern from Sew for Home, and get comfortable with all your decorative stitches. See how they stitch out. Perfect time to use your border guide foot. So now I'm just going to stitch this little leaf down the center. I maybe won't stitch the entire length, because again, you don't necessarily want to watch me stitch this out, but I'm basically just trying to keep this center chalk line that I drew in line with the little center red notch that's built into the foot. And this is really good too, like kind of mindless sewing, I call this. You just guide it a little bit. But if it slightly wavers, again, it's not the end of the world either, but it's good if you just want to decompress at the end of the day, relax over the weekend. This is great stitching to do, and it's wonderful to see these decorative stitches form as you go along. So there's my line of decorative stitches. That's beautiful. So now I'm going to scroll over. I've got a little cheat sheet here. I'm going to go to 45. So, and I love these little viney stitches. So you can see here that it's starting in the center, and then it's going to swing to the right, and then it's going to swing to the left. So I'm going to just line up wherever I want to line this up. I'm gonna choose to run this row of stitching, which is like the center of the vine I just stitched. I'm gonna run it along this long red groove on the left side of my foot. So I'm just gonna drop that down, and away I go. And again, I'm just keeping my red line in line with that original vine. So again, super simple, super easy to do. Then I will click that off. Now is the time that I'm going to use the mirroring function that's built into my machine. So again, I had just pointed out the stitch starts in the center, and then it swings to the right, and then it swings down to the left here. So now I'm going to go down here to this little mirror button and click that, and it's just going to flip it. So now it's starting in the center, but now it's swinging to the left, and then it goes down and swings to the right. So it will be a mirror image of exactly what I have. And now this time I'm going to bring my stitches. This was my center. I'm bringing that over to this red line on the border guide foot. And away I go. Now, you would maybe want to not use the little lock button and knot your threads off to the start of a seam, or maybe they'll get caught in the seam. With decorative stitches, I really don't want to back stitch. Maybe this is a time you might take your big long thread tails and pull them to the back and knot and bury. But again, you can see they're a perfect mirror image of one another, using the capabilities built into a number of our machines. And again, maybe you wonder, when would I ever use that? Well, now is the perfect time to do it. And you've got the guides in your border guide foot to line them up for you. So I will go back, and I can either scroll through with these little arrows. I can scroll through to get to the different categories of my machine, or I'll go back to my little home button and go back up to my decorative and quilting stitches. And this time I'm going to use the long stitches, and I'll go to that heart number 14. I love using it because I'm always talking about sharing the Janome love. So this time, maybe I'm going to use, let's see, what guide will I use? Maybe I'm going to use this guide, this outer long red guide that's to the left of my foot. And maybe instead of running it down the center of that vine, I'm going to run it down just the edge of these leaves that I stitched out earlier. So that red line will go to the outside of where that tip of that leaf is. So I can, again, choose whatever guide I want, and away I go. This is why it's really good, too, when you're going to be doing your big sewing machine cover, for example. Do a little test swatch like this first to really see, like, wow, that's a big stitch. So maybe I want to go to my machine and I could, I want to make it smaller. Maybe I can stitch it closer together. So again, it's great to do a stitch out before you do it on your good project. Or maybe I say, oh, maybe I want to make this stitch bigger instead. Or maybe, okay, I don't really want to use that stitch after all. So again, do your little test and see what you wish. I can go back and go click my little arrow, and I can go back to this screen to do more editing, or I can also hit the default button. So that way I don't need to memorize, oh, what was that original stitch length? But this one I do want a mirror image again, so I will just keep it as is for the example. Oh, and then I'm going to follow then this outer line now to the right is going to go to the edge of those leaves of my original line of stitching. So again, super simple to do, super quick and easy, but lots of fun. And again, a perfect time to use the decorative stitches built into your machine. So again, how cute is that? The mirror image to share the Janome love. So I think that is all I have for you today. It was going to be a nice, quick, little, easy episode, so then you can all go out and enjoy your beautiful weekend. To our American friends, happy Memorial Day, I think is on Monday for you guys. So if there's no questions or concerns, I will see you all on Monday for 2 p.m. at Janome HQ for G. I can't believe it. We're just racing through the alphabet. So have a wonderful weekend. Thank you all for joining me. I will see you again soon. Bye.